So I saw in the chat box, somebody said that they just recently found out that they're part Finnish. So they're excited about this class. And if you want to speak out, like you can unmute yourself at any time and ask questions or type it in the chat box. Is anybody else Finnish in this group? I like asking that when I'm teaching the Finnish cooking classes that I do here at Harmony. So if you want to type it in the chat box as we're going along, if you know or if you have any connection to these cookies at all. I make these cookies because I'm Finnish, as you could maybe tell by my name. And then my dad's grandma, Grandma Lila, she would make these cookies and package them up and send them to people for the Christmas holiday or like whatever. It's usually like a holiday cookie in Finland. Joulu in Finnish is Christmas, and then the torttu is like the tart. So it's Christmas tart, if you put those words together. So one person is married, or your husband is Finnish, and you're half Finnish. Cool. Yeah, so these are traditional holiday treat that they make, and they seem really complicated, like the picture that's on the recipe. Hopefully you all have like a recipe card. And they seem really cool looking and maybe a little complicated, but they're actually not that simple, or they're more simple than they appear, I should say. And I'm going to show you how to make them in two different ways, like the make them from scratch, a little bit more time-consuming way, and then the make them from a pre-made dough, and like you can use jam instead of making the prune sauce that goes in the middle of the cookie. So cool. So is there any questions? Oh, the recipe is available, I think, on Harmony's website, right, Kate?
The recipe is available on the Facebook event site.
Okay, Facebook event site on Facebook. You should be able to find the recipe. And there might be some cards still left in the lobby.
Yes,
of
there
Harmony.
will be cards at Harmony. And if anybody wants me to, I'll email it after the class.
Yeah, cool. So to get started, the first thing, TV magic, is that Kate was kind enough to put all the prunes in a pot, and it's pretty easy. You just put them in a pot, cover them with water, let them simmer for a while. You can add extra sugar to them, but I find that they're already pretty sweet that I don't need the extra sugar. You can put sugar in there, let them simmer for a while, and then until they're easy enough to mash up. And then so then you get this awesome pruny jam sauce. And if you don't like prunes, you could use dates or use like any jam, or probably not a jelly because it's probably too liquidy. But if you're not a fan of prunes, you can use like other jams that are pre-made or make your own fruit. So any fruit would go well in the middle of the cookie. So that's the first thing that you do, and then you want to like refrigerate that until you're ready to use it. And then I'm going to do the butter part, and I'm used to making this vegan style since I'm vegan. So I'm using Earth Balance, but then it works with regular butter, or you can substitute like if you have substitutions. The only one I would be wary of is using coconut oil in place of butter. But there's recipes online that use coconut oil for this. So, and if you have allergies or bake with certain things instead. So I'm going to add the 4.5 ounces of butter to my bowl, my mixing bowl, and that's going to be like 8 tablespoons of butter, 8.5. So you add your butter in there, and then your 1/3 cup of sugar. So I like using the cane sugar from Harmony. So you just put your butter in there, and your sugar. And then today I'm not making them vegan, and we can use an egg. And then other recipes have ricotta cheese in them, and that makes like the more puff pastry like dough. But I don't like messing with that. It seems really complicated and hard to do, but there's recipes online about that too. So if you want to use like the ricotta cheese in there, my cousins in Finland don't use it that way, even though that might be like the more traditional way to make them. So butter, sugar, and an egg goes in the bowl. Look at this. A couple more people joining? No? Okay. So I'm going to have Kate do some TV magic and whip that up. And then while she's doing that, I'm going to get together the flour, And it calls for 2 cups of flour. And I just made these recently for my grandpa. And they made quite a few cookies, like 20 cookies, I think. And I did them pretty small, just in case you can't eat them all.
All right, apologies for the mixing noise. Oh, that's not bad.
So I'm just gonna level off the flour. Sometimes I use a knife to like scoop off the flour, making an even cup, so I get accurate measurements. So flour, 2 cups of flour. I'm gonna use baking powder. I'm gonna use half a teaspoon of baking powder. And scoop it off the side. And if I had a fork, I use a fork to do this, but just whisk together flour like this. And you can put the orange zest. Should have added that in there, but I'm going to add the orange zest once I have the butter and sugar mixture over there. So I'll add the orange zest and a little bit of salt, a little pinch of salt. So I'll add those together. And then I'm going to mix the dry ingredients with the wet ingredients. So it's pretty simple. Not a whole lot of ingredients, like a lot of other cookies have way more ingredients to them. So I'm going to get like this little wet sand consistency, I guess you would say. So that's my wet ingredients, and I'm going to add the orange zest to it. And sometimes I leave this part out. It depends on like your flavor palette, if you want the orange zest and the citrusy in there or not. So it's not vital to the recipe. So if you don't want to use orange zest, you don't feel like you have to. Then we're just going to add the flour in after I put a thing of salt in. I just made these. I should be able to do this from like the top of my head now I've made them so much, but I only usually do it once a year on Christmas or around there. So I'm just going to mix that together really quick. Smells super good. It's weird that we're doing this over Zoom. You can't smell the cookies baking in the oven. Orange zest. Now I know what it feels like to do like a cooking show on TV. Just like talking to a blank audience. Usually we're all crammed into the community kitchen here at Harmony. I was curious if everyone on the Zoom call is in Bemidji, or if, since it's online now, if participants can be from further away. So if you feel like sharing, I'm interested to know if some people are from further away than Bemidji or heard about it through a family member and joined us. I shared the link with my parents, but they chose not to come, I guess. But
We can watch it later.
they can watch the recording. So I thought that was pretty cool. That's the good part of having the Zoom link, is I was able to share it with some people just in case they're curious of making them, but they already know how to make them, so.
Oh, we got them visiting from Maryland. Oh, welcome from Maryland.
Oh, that's awesome. Very cool. That's a good way to get together right now.
I think that might be our farthest away for classes so far. Most people have been in Bemidji.
For Maryland?
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Have like a cookie class or join like video classes together from far away. That's pretty cool. So once I have that done, I'm just gonna like knead the dough together so it all comes together into a nice ball. And you can do this on like a surface instead, but sometimes I just like to not make a mess and do it all in the bowl. Can everybody hear me okay? There's a thumbs up reaction on your Zoom call. You can put it in the chat box if you can't hear. Hopefully it's picking it up from this mic that I have here. I have a mask on, so I apologize if it's not very clear. So, just keep mixing it together. And with the orange zest in the dough, it's got like this orange tint to it. It's kind of cool. And I think last time we made it, you could see the little orange flecks in the dough when we were in here. So I'm gonna use a little bit more flour. Get all the dough off my hands. So this is the easy part, like mixing cookie dough. Everybody's probably done this before, hopefully, maybe not. That's what I'm here for. But the mixing part is pretty easy. I think the hardest part of this recipe is like the cutting the cookies out. I had one lady who took this class like a year or two ago, and she said that she has the cutters, that it's like a square cookie cutter that has the diagonal lines that I'm going to show you in it. And so she found one of these cookie cutters that's specific for these cookies, and it makes cutting them out a lot easier when you can just like stamp them out and all the lines are cut in them already for the folding. So I thought that was pretty cool, and I have to track one of those down. We'd make huge batches of these as a kid, and it would just take forever to cut all the lines and the cookies out. So I'm gonna get a nice ball, form it into a little ball. I like to wrap it in plastic or like cover it, and then I'm gonna refrigerate it for, what does this one say? At least like an hour. You get to the dough. So there's been times where I skip that step, and it, depending on what kind of butter you're using, it just helps harden the dough and like have it stick together, so it's not going to be, your cookies aren't going to melt out everywhere. So I'm going to put this aside and do a little TV magic and come out with this dough. And this has been refrigerated for a while, so we'll see if this rolls out enough. But that's the problem with doing it with coconut oil too. I just made a pie crust with coconut oil and I refrigerated it. And it was like rock solid, like. So there's dangers of using coconut oil. But, so Kate did a lovely job of mixing up my dough for me earlier today.
Thank you.
And wrapping it in plastic, putting it in the fridge for a little bit. We'll see how it goes. If it's going to be loose enough. Otherwise, I'm just going to use this stuff and demonstrate with the soft dough. So then you're going to have your dough. Maybe I'm just going to use this for the time being. That kind of got really hard. They have like industrial refrigerators and all that good stuff here. We have a convection oven, so that's fun. Okay. So I'm going to sprinkle a little flour, and I think we could change the dot cam over so you can see what I'm doing with my hands.
All right, we're going to switch the camera view, everybody, so don't be alarmed.
So I like using this dot cam when I'm teaching art to the students so that they can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to bring it over here. So I just dusted the table with some flour. I'm just going to roll it out with a rolling pin a few times. And usually your dough would be a little bit more, where am I at? Right, yeah. We're going to make this work.
There we are.
Does that work better? No. There we go. There, it's centered. Okay. So it'd be a little bit more firm than it is now. We're just going to roll it out. I'll move it back over when I'm ready. You mind grabbing one of those tiny little kid rolling pins for me? So just get some flour on there, make sure it doesn't stick to the surface. You can also do this on like a piece of parchment paper so that when you cut out the cookies, it's easier to lift them onto a cookie tray, or use a spatula to like pick them up. It's so weird to like use a rolling pin like this. No handles, I'm not used to it. All right, so I'm gonna use this little baby rolling pin. So I'm gonna roll it out to like a 1/4 of an inch thick, pretty thin. Not too thin though, because then it's gonna be hard to pick it up off the table and transfer them to your baking sheet. Is the oven going yet?
I'm gonna turn the gas on.
Oh, perfect.
Yes, with the convection oven.
Perfect.
It's a lot less noisy. We gotta
So temperature wise for your oven, you're going to preheat your oven to 400, and it'll take a minute to cut out the cookies. So depending on how quick you're cutting out your cookies, let's see if I got this stuck on here. You can preheat it before or after you're done cutting out all your cookies. So I'm just going to stretch it out a little bit more. Get some lines in there, but so I'm going to take like a knife or whatever you use to like cut some lines in here, and you can use a ruler too if you want. And we might use this over. I think that's in line with my hand. Cool. Okay, so depending on what you want to use to cut it out, I'm going to use like this little bread tool that's plastic so I don't mess up the stainless steel table. And you can use a ruler to measure them out, but you want to get them at least a little bit similar in size so that when they bake in the oven that they're not like tiny little ones and then big cookies, and then some of them will be burnt on the little corners of the cookies. So I try to get them fairly even in size. So I just kind of cut off the ends. You can still see that. Cool. Make some straight lines. And then you'll just re-roll all the side dough when you have all that stuff. Just peel that off and you'll have more dough to roll out.
That's the question that is looking more relevant.
somebody.
No, you keep reporting falsely.
Go on, so I'm just gonna mute folks. Unmute yourself when you feel like when you need a question.
That could have been a dead person.
So somebody had a question about rolling the dough out in thirds, or like rolling it out, folding it, and rolling it again. So I find that when I take the dough, this is the dough right out of the refrigerator, that it's a little, usually it's a little softer than this, so it's easier to roll. I don't know if you can see the indents that I'm making in there. But then I do the rolling and folding when it's harder, because then it softens it up a little bit and gets it a little bit easier to roll out, and I don't know what the term would be.
Pliable?
Like, yeah, like pliable and soft. But since I'm not using the dough right out of the refrigerator, I'm using the dough that I just mixed together for the sake of TV and time. So I don't, this is too hard to roll out maybe right now. So that's why I didn't roll it out and like fold it over and roll it out again. And that's also a technique that you use when you're making like croissants or maybe other puff pastry, and it provides that flakiness to it. So that's why I didn't roll it out here. But if you find that that works with your dough, so this stuff is way more soft and pliable. So I didn't want to like overwork it too much right now, since it's already pretty soft, if that answers your question. So now that I have like this rectangle, I'm gonna cut a few lines down and try to make them even. So I'll just use this stuff again later. Sometimes I'll use a knife for this instead, but so now I have these rectangles, and I'm going to make some squares. Try to keep them as even as possible. Sometimes I'll use a ruler if I'm trying to be really, really precise and accurate. So hopefully you can see my, oops, there we go, 6 little cookies there. And then it also, like, you rework your ball of dough too, so that gets a little bit more pliable, and like rework it so it's all kneaded together and not cracking and crumbling. So when I took all that away. So then the next step is how we're going to cut them so that we can put the prune jam or whatever jam that you choose to use in the center. And so this, I figured out a nicer way to do this instead of like having each square like separated from all the other ones, is that I'll take a knife or this little cutting tool and cut through the two squares that are next to each other, and then I'll do the same on this side. And then I'm just cutting X's instead of having to cut each one individually. But sometimes it's nice to be able to rotate them too. You can't see that. So then I'll just pull them away and rotate them. So it's up to you of how you want to, whatever's most comfortable for you or efficient. So then you're going to make like this little square that's got the cuts in the corners, and I'm going like halfway in so that there's enough room for the jam to go in the middle. So I'll just keep doing that to show you. So I just cut all the corners halfway in. And I found this is like the quickest way for me to cut a whole bunch of little lines. So hopefully now you get what I was talking about, the cookie cutter, and how nice it would be to have a cookie cutter that's got all the diagonal lines in it right there for you. So you don't have to do this. But it's not the worst thing in the world. So there we go. Sometimes I forget a few. So yeah, whatever works best for you. Like if you have like a little plastic cutter or a knife or a spatula would also work to use that, like the metal ones, not the little plastic ones like this. So not that, but. Okay, so the next step is taking your prunes or whatever jam or jelly that you choose to use. And you just take a little bit of prunes or whatever, and you just dab it in the middle. And you don't want too much, so it'll overflow on the sides. But you don't want too little, like that's way too little, but just enough. These kind of remind me of Fig Newmans. My other grandma always had Fig Newmans in her house, so they're like the cakey, more cookie-like version of a Fig Newman, I guess. So there you have it. So put a little dollop of prunes in every square, and so then I'm going to move these away so I can just show you on one. Sometimes I'll do this and I'll fold them right when they're in a row like this, but then other times it's a little tricky to get the corners to pull up when you're doing this. So sometimes it's easier to have a little bit of room to work with your hands. So I'll show you with this one. So you have all these cuts, and then this is where you get the pinwheel. So you're going to do every other one. So I'm going to pick up this corner and fold it into the middle, and then I skip this one and I do the next one over. So one of each side of the square, one of those triangles gets picked up. So I'm going to skip this one over here and then pick up this one. And you can use a little water to dab in the middle for it to stick, or later on we'll also brush egg on the top, like an egg wash, and that helps them like brown in the oven a little bit and have the triangles stick a little better. When I'm doing this for myself and it's vegan, sometimes I don't use the egg on the top, and they stay together fine in the oven. I'll just use a little water or pinch them down together. So I'll do that a few more times, so in case you missed it or don't get it yet. So maybe I'll do it like this. You can see a little better. How about that? So I'm going to take one corner of each side. So I skip this one. I pull this one over, skip that one, pull this one over, skip this one, and pinch it in the middle. And so then you'll have like that pinwheel effect. And even me, who like, I don't make these all the time, like they're kind of a special treat to have. I'll sometimes still mess the pinwheel up, but it's easy enough to just like peel them back or catch your mistake, or like, if nothing else, I've folded them over when I have extra dough and just made like those little prune cookies that are in a half moon shape. But it's pretty simple to peel them back and then fix your mistake if you mess up the first few. So We'll do one more, and then I'll show you the puff pastry version of this. So this is the one that's like all from scratch. So skipping everyone. And then you kind of get into a rhythm with it too. Like once you fold a few, then you get it down, and they look complicated, but they're not too hard to do once you get the hang of it and get into a rhythm. So I'll just fold these last couple really quick so we can put them in the oven. And is there any questions before we move on to like the quick, easy one and these pop in the oven? You can type them in the chat box or feel free to unmute yourself, or if you have any comments. I'm gonna do one more. I'm gonna put a little more jam on this one. That looks a little sparse. I'm gonna do this. Hold on. Let's put this a little more. So hopefully this helps to have the video, the dot cam, so you can see a little bit better of what I'm doing. So there's all the pinwheels, and then we can get to the cookie sheets. And the final step is using a spatula. And if you want to, like sometimes, like I've even probably done this on the parchment paper and then on the cookie sheet, so then they're easier to pick up. So they're pretty delicate. So then I just kind of use a spatula, pick them up gently, and they don't rise or move or get bigger at all. So you can place them on your cookie sheet fairly close together. And I like using parchment paper, again, because they're so delicate and I don't want them, like taking them off the cookie tray. If they get stuck, you won't have that nice, crisp pinwheel shape anymore. And you don't want them too thin on the dough. You can still see that. But you don't want them too thin, because in the oven, the little pinwheels that stick out, they'll get burnt and crispy brown, but they still taste good. So unless they're actually like super burnt. So that's the last step. Put them on the cookie sheet, and then the very final is the powdered sugar, which is there. And then I'm going to grab. So the final step is putting some powdered sugar on the top, and I do this when it's on the cookie sheet, so then it stays on there, not all over the place. And I have like a little, if you don't have a shifter for your powdered sugar, I have a T-ball at home that's like the mesh grate, and I use that a lot to shift powdered sugar, and so it kind of already happened there. So then I just kind of gently dust them with powdered sugar. Add more sugar to the holiday cookies, right? So much sugar. I just made a gingerbread house for the first time in like forever, and used powdered sugar to make the royal icing without an egg. And it's like glue. Like I stuck them together, and I was so surprised that powdered sugar and just water was like basically making sugar glue, and they stuck together really nice. So there you have it. That's the long drawn out version.
Prior to baking and when they come out?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think I've done it both ways. We're gonna find out. I think I've done it both ways actually, where I put it when they come out of the oven, and I'll dust them on the cookie tray. So I think sometimes, isn't it, that the powdered sugar would like burn off or bake out? So we'll find out. Maybe I'll do the next ones afterwards. So now that was like the longer version. So if you have a lot of time and you can like roll out all this dough. When I did that part, it was only 6 cookies, but you'll most likely get like anywhere from 16 to 20 cookies in each batch. And that depends on how big you make them. This is how big I usually make them, but you don't really want to go too much smaller than that, because they will get a little crispier. And then some of the class people have made like bigger pinwheel cookies, and that works too. So it's up to you. So then we'll put this to the side. I'll show you, and we can switch cameras now. And I'll show you the super quick and easy version of doing this, because why not? It's funny, my cousin's in Finland, I was asking her for her recipe, and she's like, we just get them from a box. Like, they have way more of this style puff pastry in like the freezer section in Finland, and they just use this style to make their cookies with, so maybe her mom makes them from scratch still. But I've never really seen too much of the puff pastry dough like this too many places. And then this is also new to Harmony, but didn't you say it was gluten-free?
We have another gluten-free.
Oh, gotcha. So, yeah. Yeah, so there's like a gluten-free version of this puff pastry. So that would be a great option, like if you're making holiday cookies and sending them to people. And I've never tried baking gluten-free. I think I did it once with Pula, and it was an epic fail. So I would probably trust somebody who makes the dough better than I do for using like a gluten-free crust. Or if you're just short on time and you want to make these cookies really fast and impress people and be like, oh yeah, I totally made these. But you're folding them, so they still look really impressive. They're not just from like a little tube. But that is a new thing in Harmony, so I've been curious to try using like the pre-made puff pastry dough. And so this stuff is in a package in the freezer, and you thaw it out. You can roll it out a few times. There's parchment paper in the middle of it too, which I read about. So I'm gonna unfold this somehow. So this is some fancy puff pastry dough, and this is how. Oh, there's another question. You guys are so good. I'm losing track of what I'm doing. So yeah, egg wash before you put it in the oven. I'm used to not doing that, so I should probably practice making it like full dairy style. We did the egg wash with the class when they were in the kitchen a lot. I don't know. I think I did that for my grandpa's cookies. I just made them like a month ago. And like they make them like more brown. So if you want like the darker cookie, I don't know what the picture on the recipe, like it's a lighter puff pastry looking dough. So like if you're doing it really lightly for the egg wash, I even found the brush and I didn't even remember it was sitting right in front of me. But we'll do a little egg wash and I'll brush it on the bat so you can see the difference of what they're going to turn out like. It's just preference and like how you want your cookies to look, I guess. I'm not super into like I guess I take pictures of what I bake, but okay. So like the Instagram, Facebook, food doc, like food photography thing. But that's kind of like another way to get them to be browner, a little bit more crispy looking. So yeah, so this is the puff pastry. And I think they said you can just use it as it is. Just post size flour. Gotcha. That's super quick and easy. So I could basically just use this as it is. You can't see what I'm doing down there, but use this dough and maybe roll out the little crinkles, whatever. That is from when it's rolled up and in parchment paper. And I'm gonna throw a little bit more flour down. And I think there's like way more options in other stores too of like puff pastry. And so you can use this instead of like having to make your own dough. Make it super easy and quick. And then you can like use the pre-made jam too. And like basically the only thing that you have to do is assemble them and do the little foldy, time-consuming part of it. All the other stuff is pretty easy, like really simple ingredients, really simple making like a jam yourself or prunes or whatever you choose to do. Or you can, we did this last year in the cooking class too, like we got a few nice high quality jams from Harmony in the aisle, like there's like a Red Lake jam that I really like to use. And then you just cut them all out. And I'm gonna do that again if you wanna switch the camera so then they can see this puff pastry. So this is super simple because it's already rolled out when you pull it out of the box. It's really thin. And so this is going to puff up a little bit more than the other ones. And so I'm just going to do the same thing and cut out a few of these cookies, of the squares. And you can use a ruler, like I said before, and that sometimes is helpful when you're first doing something like this. I kind of just eyeball it. Harmony keeps asking me to come back and do cooking classes, and I'm just like, when I'm at home, I'm usually just like not following the recipe, or I'll forget to add salt to whatever I'm cooking. I guess I'm probably more careful when I'm baking, because that's when all the chemistry happens, and you gotta be a little bit more exact. Don't mix up the baking powder and the baking soda, so I'm a little bit more careful when I'm baking. So that's why I just kind of eyeball this instead of doing a ruler. Make some more squares. We'll pop them in the oven. We'll do egg wash on these ones. And I haven't used this puff pastry dough yet, so I'm really interested to see how this turns out. If that gives you any indication of my style, just like, let's cook a class, or let's teach a class and then try something brand new for the first time.
It's an education class for learning.
Yeah. I think it'll turn out great. Harmony only carries good products, right? So this is a little bit more sticky. So I'm going to cut these out really quick. Maybe a few. Is there any questions while I'm busy doing this? Usually there's a little more chatter when we're doing a real class, and there's conversation about what other cookies you like making, or if you're sending these to anybody, or you're just going to send them the recipe and say, make them yourself. On that note, though, they are very hard to ship, I found out, because I was trying to box them up and send them up north. And I was looking on YouTube for tips of how to send cookies in the mail. So if anybody's doing that this holiday season, sorry about the fan. Hopefully you can still hear me. But I found this really cool idea of how to send cookies without them breaking. Like, usually you want to send the not so delicate cookies in the mail. I'm gonna try this. Is to put them in tins and then use like little tiny marshmallows, the little mini marshmallows, and you put your cookies in a tin, and then you fill all around the cookies with little marshmallows. Like, you make a bottom layer, and then you put the cookies in, and then you fill in the rest of the empty space, so then they don't get jostled around in the transportation of the cookies. So I thought that was really cool, and then you get to eat the packaging instead of having like a bunch of weird plastic packaging peanuts in your food box. But then I just ended up driving them there and hand delivering them, and then the guy who took them from me dropped them on the floor in the entryway. But they still taste good, even if they get broken, right? So these are the puff pastry ones. I think we had another person joining us, but we did the long drawn out version where it takes all of your time. Well, it's not that long, but making your own dough, making your own prune jam. So now that I have the stock cam, I can show you. Doesn't look very appetizing, but it's pretty sugary. Really nice tasting. Is there another question, or?
Somebody's put their hand up. Powdered sugar before you put it in.
Did somebody ask that again?
Yep.
Oh. Is that a comment or a question? I don't know. No?
Yeah, feel free to unmute if you guys want to ask directly.
It's a question. Sorry, I didn't. Question. Do you do that before you put it in the oven or after?
Oh, before or after? Yeah, I think I usually do it after. I just kind of did that and not taking into account the TV version of producing on camera.
Okay,
Thinking that I'm
thank
just
you.
gonna pull some out of the oven. Sorry for the confusion. So just making a few more of these, and then we'll pop them in the oven. Maybe I'll make 6 there's an even quantity, and see how these little guys turn out. Has anybody had these cookies before?
Other than me.
Is there something in the Q&A chat box up there? There's 2 separate ones.
Can you freeze the cookies?
Ooh, I think I looked that up. I mean, who freezes cookies? I just eat them all right away. It's horrible. I think I looked that up because I was wondering if my grandpa lived in an assisted living home or whatever, and I was curious if he was going to eat all of the cookies or if they're going to have to freeze them. So I think I looked that up, but they're probably not the best. Like, they're pretty delicate, so I don't know how they hold up in the freezer. If you package them really nice, I bet they would be fine. And I'm spacing on what I read about that, if you can freeze these cookies. I think there's information online. If we send out the recipe through email, I'll find that article or the recipe from a blogger that I was reading about freezing the cookies. I think it was on the longer recipe from last year.
Yep.
We had like more instructions at the end of it, but if I find that out, we'll email it out. Yeah, I would just be worried about them like not holding up in the freezer that well since they're so delicate, but why not give it a shot, I guess. Oh, there's four of you that are finished.
Another question, are you using the 2-quart puff pastry or the gluten-free kind?
So today we're using the normal puff pastry, this kind. And I haven't used the gluten-free, or actually haven't used this kind either yet. But I think that the gluten-free version would work well too. So
Sorry about that.
now that there's another person joining, I'll show you the folding technique really quick again. So basically, you use every other corner. So you pick up one and you fold it into the middle, and then you skip that one. So you should only have one corner from each side. And you flip it over. You can use water again to do this, or a little bit of egg wash. And then this version we're gonna brush with egg too on the top. So we can use a little bit of water. This dough is a lot kind of similar, but it's got a little bit of a different texture going on with it. It's a little softer than the dough that I just made, even though that dough is pretty soft since we hadn't refrigerated that one for the sake of TV. So folding one corner, skipping a corner, folding it in again. And like I said, like if you mess up, it's pretty simple to just peel one back, and then you have a little bit of the jam on there, and then I just brush it off sometimes when I do that. So I'll fold these up really quick, and we'll stick them in the oven so we can see the final product and see how this works out. And look at the other ones. Hopefully you guys make these at home sometime so you can taste them, since we're not doing this live and in person. I might need some egg wash on that one. Sure. Is there anything else popping up in there?
Another one.
Who said that?
And what other
Oh.
kinds of jam are traditional?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think the prunes are the most traditional style. Maybe I've seen apricot done in Finland before, but I think most of the time it's prunes. So dates are in that similar family, I guess. And I think I've used dates one time. So
I apologize.
So I think I just messed up. So see, that's when I messed one up, I think. So this one, skip that one, do this one, skip that one. I just kind of brush that off. Skip this one. So I'll do that one. I'll do another one. I saw a comment that to refold one. So you got your little dollop of jam or prune in the middle, and so you take one corner from each side. So you would fold one in, and then you skip. Sorry, can you see all that? So you skip this one, and then you'd fold this one up if it's cut enough, and then you skip that one. And come over here and fold this other one. So you're skipping every other one to do the pinwheel effect, and you're only putting one corner in from both sides. And you'd be able to see pretty quickly, like if you folded the wrong one in, like it doesn't look the same. And then it's just backing up a little bit and folding in the right side. So you should end up with that, triangle or pinwheel triangle thing. So cool.
Another question. Have you ever seen done with lingonberries or mulberries?
Oh, possibly. That would be really good. Those are popular in is it mulberry? Is that what they said?
Yep.
Yeah, I think those are super popular in Finland too.
You do have lingonberry jam now.
Oh, do you? Yes. So that'd be super simple to take the jam that's already made from Harmony and use that for your cookies. I don't know if I've seen that. I think I've seen like one that's like that's why I was thinking apricot, because it was like yellow. So most of the time they're like this dark and light, so it's always the prunes, I think, but that would be super good too. I think maybe they have like the cloudberry flavor in Finland. I don't know if that's the same as a mulberry, because a mulberry is like a darker fruit, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the cloudberry is like that yellow orange. So they have a lot of candy that's in Finland that's like that flavor. So maybe they've done it with that too.
Okay. Are there savory versions? Ooh.
Ooh, who asked that one? That's
Vivian.
Vivian. That would be super good. I bet like instead of, we put orange zest in this dough, but I bet instead of orange zest, I bet you could do like some kind of savory herb and then figure out what you want to do in the middle instead of like a fruit, or maybe you want that savory sweet, so it's not as sweet as what you do with like a prune. There's a lot of natural sugar in there. But if you ever do that, let me know how it turns out. I might even have to try that, because that would be pretty tasty.
Yeah, cloudberry is the same. Maltaberry and Norwegian. Cool.
Oh, nice. I like that. Learning from everybody. So we're just gonna transfer these to the cookie sheet again.
Let's switch the camera.
Okay. Like I said earlier, they don't expand at all. You can switch it if you want. They don't really like get bigger, so you can put them pretty close together on the cookie sheet. And so then I'll just add the egg wash to these ones. So then the little stay down. This is why I use a spatula, because then they come apart. Yeah, so that one's coming apart a lot. Spreading. So, yeah, so there's like I don't know if you can see me. So the puff pastry looks a lot lighter than the ones that we made earlier, but that's because there's orange zest in there. So that might be why. So, cool. Now we're gonna put these in the oven for a a few minutes. What does it say? 7 to 10 minutes at 400 degrees. This is gas oven. So I think we're doing pretty good at that, right? Yep. We are on perfect time. Wash. What is happening to my head?
We are off camera, but she's putting the egg wash on.
For the sake of time. Oh, wow. So, that was most of it. Is there any questions that I missed or
Comments, cookie stories.
anything?
All right, I'm going to check the chat, see if anybody's got any more questions. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask them now. Comments.
See, we got a few more people joining us.
Yep.
Luckily, this will be recorded, which almost made me more nervous to do this when I found out that it was going to be recorded and put on YouTube and Harmony. But if you want to go back and like watch it again or make it in the future, it'll be recorded online, which is pretty cool. Of how we're able to do classes right now with Zoom. I haven't personally done a whole lot of the Zoom classes or like the tours that you can go on of museums yet, but I have to teach on Zoom, so that's probably why I'm not into the whole spending too much time in front of the computer, I guess, sometimes. But
Any other questions or comments, or is everybody putting them in the oven?
oh yeah, I wonder if anybody was actually working along with me. That'd be cool. That's like how they used to do cooking shows on TV, right? Like they'd show you step by step, and then they'd pull like a full turkey out of the oven.
How long do they keep for? How long do they keep for?
What do I see? Is that not on the recipe at all? It might be on. We have like another version of this that we used in years past.
Well, thank you all for joining us. This was a lot of fun.
I bet they'd keep for like a week or so. They're like if you put them in an airtight container. What was that?
1, 2, 3.
Oh, the cookies? Is that what he's talking about?
I believe so.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really have that problem, but I think it'll, we can add that to the recipe too. I know that it's on the one that I have at home. I just always eat them so fast, so like I give them away to people so they're not sitting around my house all the time. Because I didn't roll them all out, but you'll get quite a few. And we'll find out if they're able to be frozen or how they hold up frozen. I've never tried that. And then like for how long they keep, I think they would keep just as well as like other cookies that you'd make and then have in your cookie jar or something. So I'm pretty delicate when I store them. Like I'll store them in a glass container, and like layer them in there really nice so that they don't crack and break. But they're still good when you drop them on the floor or they break in the jar or whatever. But if you're giving them to people, it's a little harder.
You can read even quickly, Kristen, the puff pastry is off after 4 days. Thank you, Vivian.
The puff pastry is off. It tastes funny after 4 days, you mean? Or it just like gets too,
Do you mean the puff pastry tastes funny or it becomes too hard to work with? No, it's too rolls.
oh,
That makes sense.
gotcha. Yeah, I haven't ever used this one before, so I've used puff pastry to make the cookies before, but I haven't used this kind exactly. But the puff pastry like puffs up a little bit more, so I think that those ones would be more delicate and they wouldn't last as long, or like Vivian's saying is that they'd get a little bit more moist afterwards, or after a few days. I used other, like when I was living in Finland, I used puff pastry to make these cookies. But well, I'm glad you guys had fun. It's not the same not having you all in the kitchen with us. But soon enough, we'll hopefully be able to do that again. So,
They're coming along. A couple more minutes on the cookies.
thanks for joining us and giving the online Zoom cooking classes a shot.
I'm gonna hang around a few more minutes until the cookies come out of the oven. It's totally cool.
Yeah, it's up to you. I know we're just at 6:30 right now, so.
Hey, thanks so much. It's Kroon Kaka. Oh, I love Kroon Kaka.
Yeah, what was the other one? Can you pull that up again? So I'm half Finnish on my dad's side and half Norwegian on my mom's side. So my grandma, my mom's mom, she would make the krumpaka and the sandbakels and I don't know how do you pronounce that one. The flat road. I remember that, and the Fatiman and the rosettes. I've been looking for like a krumpaka iron or whatever, like the little press that you can use on the stovetop. So I want to get one of those and like start making my other side of heritage. I've made lefse recently, but maybe I stick with the Finnish side because it's way easier. Like you don't need all the special irons and the rosette makers and the lefse iron, the rounds, and then you need like the special rolling pin and like all the special equipment to make lefse. But maybe once I get into that, then we'll do a lefse making class at Harmony.
Yes, we have had a lot of demand for lesson making classes.
Yeah, because that's super fun. I've heard that it's really hard to make vegan though, so last Christmas I had lefse that was not vegan. But who is it? Sue Doden, right? She used to do a lot of cooking classes here. And I was picking her brain at Harmony here and asking her if she's ever made vegan lefse when I was a little bit more strict. And it just doesn't work the same, but I'd like to give it a shot and see how it works. But I'm guessing that all those other Norwegian desserts need that full fat dairy for whatever reason. So yeah, that'd be cool to do like those classes too. Or maybe Cheryl wants to teach a class here about those.
Yeah, I've got a group cocker iron I'll bring in.
Oh, do you? Nice.
I'm having vegan on the mom's side too.
Cool. Yep. Yeah, those were really fun to make. My grandma would make those a lot. So I had plenty of sugar on all sides of my family with Joulutorttu and hula is like a Finnish sweetbread that I've made here too. And then all the other Norwegian desserts and that sort of thing. So that's fun. Those are also like very delicate and you can't ship those. Like, that would be super hard to do. So that flour all over me. Oh, those puff pastry ones look awesome. Yep. They're like puffing up a little bit. They're like a little thicker. Huh? Yeah, they're not brown enough yet. All right. So I usually like watch whatever I'm baking too, and like just go off smell and like sight and looking at them. And it helps if you have like the window and the light in your oven, so you don't have to open the door all the time and letting that heat out or whatever. It sometimes affects whatever I'm baking. But I like we've used like the convection oven here, and now we're using the gas oven, but your oven at home might be different. So I would just watch the cookies, and then they're delicate on the corners, so they crisp up a little bit faster than the rest of them. And it depends on your oven. I think I usually tend to bake them on the middle rack so that they're not getting too much heat from the top and like burning on the bottom. So if you put them in on the middle rack, they should be good. And then it's just, everybody's oven's different, which is hard. I don't know how people make recipes and tell people how to bake them exactly.
A
So
lot of feelings they don't tell you.
yeah. So. Well, thanks for coming, and we'll pull the cookies out in here in a few minutes to see how they turned out with the new puff pastry, and I think I'll make the rest of this dough so it doesn't go to waste.
Class on, I don't know what that is.
What is that?
Mochaka?
It's something Finnish. I'm not sure what that is though.
Yeah, what is that?
Moyaka. Fish stew. Oh, moyaka. Yeah, fish stew. Yeah, that I have thought about teaching that here. That is really good.
No.
Yeah, the fish. I think we talked about it, but like in Finland, there's fish stew, and that was super good. I brought my brother. He came when I was living in Finland. He came to pick me up or whatever and bring me home. So I would come home. And I brought him to a restaurant for his birthday, and he ordered like lasagna or something off the menu. And then he's like, "Oh, but you have fish stew. Like, let me have that." And then the waitress was kind of just like, "You want fish stew instead of lasagna?" And he's like, "No, I want them both." It was hilarious. So like our little tiny cafe table was just full of food that he ordered, but the moyaka is super good. So I'll have to get my aunt's recipe in Finland and then maybe have a moyaka class. I thought about doing the pea soup. It's like another huge Finnish thing. Like every Thursday at school, we'd have pea soup or split pea green soup or whatever with like a flat pancake thing. But I've never tried to make that, but the pea soup's pretty easy, but that's really simple. We could have like whole Finnish cuisine.
Yeah, you could.
And Norwegian. I gotta get better at the Norwegian part of it. Seems a lot harder. But who knows?
Well, that's the hardest part of baking.
Yeah, really when to pull them out.
Yep.
I also watch them and then like flip them when I notice like the back are cooking too fast and then like the front isn't. So that's what I'm gonna do right now is flip the pan around.
I hope some of you are making this right now because it smells incredible in here.
Oh man, well this top apart. They're looking good for a while there. I think that's when they need to be held together with a little bit more water. I wonder if that's how you sell more though. I gotta look that up. Cool. I'm gonna watch videos.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Thank you all for your patience with the cookies. Cookies bake on their own time sometimes.
This again, I'll finish cooking all the stuff too, so it doesn't go to waste. I'm gonna put it out and then set this up. Maybe we can like do the. So, cookie time.
All right, switching cameras.
So this is kind of what I was going for. So the ends kind of get, let's figure this out. So the ends kind of get a little bit more brown. And so that's what happened. So these are the ones with the dough that we made from scratch. And so the ends kind of get a little bit more brown when it was in the back of the oven. Then all these guys look fine. So, and these turned out pretty good. And then this is when I would add powdered sugar because as you can see, the powdered sugar kind of like baked out of there. So it was my TV baking mistake. Going too fast and thinking I was pulling these out of the oven. So yeah, I would do the powdered sugar thing again over the top of these. I can show you that really quick. And then the other ones, the puff pastry ones, they did not stick together as well as I would like. As you can see here, like they kind of pulled apart. They were looking good for the first half of baking, and then they kind of just pulled apart. So I think that means that you'd want to use more water when you're putting them together. And I'll dip my finger in water, and then when they don't stick together as well. Oops. This is way bigger than my little strainer at home, my sugar thing. So then this is what I do with this powdered sugar on top.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Let them cool down for a little bit too. I know it's hard to wait. I burn my tongue all the time. So yeah, so I just powdered sugar all of them and send them away to somebody who can eat them for me. Yeah.
Love it. All right.
There you have it. There's the prettiest one. We'll just end on that note.
All right.
So if there's any other questions before we all go, but hopefully you had an enjoyable time, and you can switch it back to the other one if you want. Other camera. So hopefully you understood most of that. I know I'm wearing a mask and it might be hard to hear me, but hopefully this mic picked up most of my voice and sound quality was good. So thank you all for coming, and we'll post the recipe again, and then I'll add, if you can freeze them, and I'll add the fresh by date on it, so that those will be included.
We'll put all that information on Facebook. So we'll put it on the event page.
Okay, perfect.
All right, thank you all for coming. Thank you, Aili. You are a rock star as always.
Thanks. Bye. Thank you for coming.